This is called Adagios Config Management Done Right. And we will do the Q&A at the end. So if you have a question anytime, just please raise your hand so I can get over to you with a microphone. And I think that's about all I have. So ladies and gentlemen, Pall Sigurdsson.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I get another clap? Shit, that feels good. Thank you. So I'm here to talk about Adagios. We're an add-on to Nagios, like a web configuration interface. Maybe before I start talking, I want to know who I'm talking to a little bit. So how many people here are software developers or programmers? Okay, quite a few. System administrators? Okay, some of the same hands. I like that. That's me too sometimes. How many people here are the Nagios guy in their environment or a customer's environment? Meaning, oh wow, almost everyone. Are you guys responsible for being the one that adding checks or just deploying new Nagios servers? Yeah, reckon so. Okay, good. This is going to be our agenda for today. I want to start by talking a little bit about me and some monitoring best practices. I know it's very early in the morning and some of you were partying really hard last night. So this is the time to nap if you're going to nap. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about Adagios and a project that's called Monitor Iceland. Has anyone heard of Monitor Iceland? Oh, okay, some. Probably because I was the one talking about it. That was second half of my presentation, I'm going to do some demos. I guess that's what everyone is here for, to look at demos. So I'm Palle. I have been monitoring consultant since maybe past 6 or 7 years. Since 2009, that means almost exclusively Nagios. I flirt a little bit with high availability sometimes, but being the Nagios guy has been what I do. So what I've been doing in my job, I've been joining a lot of enterprises that want to boost their monitoring capabilities or sometimes restart their monitoring effort, like switching over to Nagios, sometimes from Nagios to a different install of Nagios. Since 2011, I've been doing mostly development. Means I've been mostly doing tools that made my previous job easier. I've had a very high focus on what I call monitoring quality. Usually monitoring quality means getting fewer false positives and, more importantly, fewer false negatives. Basically, monitor whatever you want to monitor, not get those alerts at night. Mostly I've been working in Iceland and around Iceland, like companies that are related to Iceland. I'm a core developer in 3 projects: Pinac, OKConfig, and Adagios. Adagios is a web configuration interface. Pinac is a collection of Python modules for everything that is Nagios related. We use it mostly for parsing configuration files and editing them in place. Then we have OKConfig, which is like kind of like a bastard in our environment. We don't pay the attention we should do, but they are like tools to deploy agents, scan networks, and some monitoring packs of various quality. So I consult, but I reckon I've done maybe 100,000 service checks in 4 years, and that's me personally. I don't want to be the guy that is adding service checks because it's not fun for me anymore. In fact, it's really, really boring. I did not do them all manually. Was there anyone that came to a presentation on web configuration and would expect that? I don't think so. And I believe in this slogan here. It's called monitoring sucks. Has anyone heard of monitoring sucks? It's a trend on Twitter. And it's made by people that really love monitoring. but they made the clever observation a few years ago that the tools that we have in monitoring, they're just not good enough. So they claim, because IT has been exploding, and the tools have been kind of falling behind. Nagios would be one of them. Like, all of the monitoring applications are guilty of this. And you sometimes have that feeling that you want to do something awesome with monitoring, but the monitoring application, it's kind of holding you back because everything's like cumbersome, like harder than it should be is the term I go for. Monitor all the things, something I love. I have outlined here like a few things that, in my experience, are pitfalls for a lot of people that implement monitoring. And there's a reason why I'm going into that before I talk about Adagios, because I want to express kind of the problem domain that we have been trying to fix. So there was stuff that I spent too much time on, and I said, okay, there must be tools that make it at least a little bit nicer. And I come right down to this, how to create a lot of service checks efficiently. You see, this is challenge number 2. I'm not going to talk right away about monitoring challenge number 1. That's establishing a good monitoring baseline. That would be stuff like choosing which software to use, finding out what you want to monitor, what plugins you have to download, what plugins you have to write, stuff like that. No, I'm talking about after that. After you know exactly what you want to monitor, you have a set of application servers over here, and you know exactly what kind of service checks you want to apply on them, what plugins you're going to use. And probably you start out by hand, like deciding service check that, check time on this, disk space, yeah, it's a good idea, let's put that in. After that, you will find some tricks, like every clever sysadmin will find tricks to do his job faster. These are the ones that I have seen. If you're adding a new host, copy-paste a similar host. Applying services to host group. Who has done that here? Apply their services to host groups. Yeah. It makes adding new services easier, right? Applying services via regular expressions based on host names. Who does that? So it's like if it so happens that all your Linux servers start with lnx dash something, you will say, oh, yeah, right, the Linux disk checks, they will go on all those servers. Sounds so easy, yeah. Create some sort of custom script at their site, or any internal systems that will generate configuration. Who does that? I know all of the companies that I have worked, they have done that. That's why we started to abstract that with our tool called OKConfig, which does exactly that, but they do it our way instead of someone else's way, which I never like. Configuration management systems like Puppet or Chef, I think that's a very interesting approach. Sometimes you're transferring the problem you had with lots of configuration and you're moving it to the configuration management system instead, which is good if you're not the Puppet guy. So the monitoring guy does not have a problem. Most of these, they are useful when your environment is like more or less the same. If you don't have that odd AIX over here, he kind of break the system for you. When we identified this single fact as a problem for us, so adding one host in Nagios, it took too much time. It shouldn't take 2 hours or whatever it was. People had all these tricks. At that point, we were not certain that web configuration was the way to go. Like, we don't need it for that. We can script that. We do Pinac for that. Adding a bunch of hosts, easy. After we're done with that, adding all your hosts in, 6 months passed, keeping the monitoring system up to date. Has anyone had that problem? So you add a bunch of servers, then new servers come in the environment, and you're just too busy with installing, you don't have time to monitor them. Can be hard for most people. I know when I started installing a Nagios, and was usually like 20, 30, 40 hosts or something, and back then it more applied than now. There was mostly like a setup and forget. Now I don't feel like it's so. Like I'm constantly changing thresholds here, or removing checks, or adding checks. I think that applies for most people, especially if they have virtual environments. I almost used the word cloud here. I'm very happy I did not. Automation, of course, really, really helps with this. So if you have got that thing nailed down for you, really nice. This is the one that bugged me the most. How do you create configuration that is afterwards maintainable? And your configuration files, they get big really, really, really fast. And sometimes I come in an enterprise and there's that one Nagios guy, he knows the insides and outs, and maybe not everyone else like completely certain they know how his config works. But we have come to love this point here. You should treat your config like it's code. The configuration format in Nagios, it can be extremely flexible. I know of at least 6 ways contact can be added on hosts. I would love for there to be just one, but no, there are 6. Most people use all of them. Multiple inheritance for objects. Yeah, sounds so lovely when you're writing that config, but when someone else is reading it, they're like, what are you doing? The idea I'm trying to convey here is that maintainability of the configuration files, it is important. And we usually see like 1 or 2 people that take the role of the Nagios guy. And I'm going to try to explain what the Nagios guy is. He's usually that guy here, that Italian, and he's pointing at a volcano erupting. He's like, guys, volcano, we should go now because for this volcano here. Chances are, if you have installed Nagios, you have that guy here. He's usually very smart, maybe even the champion in your infrastructure. He knows just about everything that is going on in the infrastructure. Sometimes he is the only Nagios administrator, meaning he's the only one that is making changes. Sometimes he's even the only Nagios user, meaning the screen of unhandled problems, it's like screen and a half full's worth of unhandled, which is his personal to-do list of what to do this year. Sometimes I am that Nagios guy. These days I try not to be the one that does cool things for Nagios. This is a problem because for the 7 years that I've been working with Nagios, big problems arise when the Nagios guy will leave. At some point he will want to do something else than monitoring, or he might even go to a new company. And that's when you have a lot of new people coming in, and they're supposed to manage that configuration. And more often than not, you have that, that config, that's spaghetti. Who's heard of spaghetti code? Yeah, so spaghetti config. That's what I'm getting now. More often than not, it means someone else will step up, and he will be the new Nagios guy. And he really wants to learn Nagios, but he doesn't want to work on that system, so there's a new monitoring server born. Vicious cycle, I would call that. In software development, people have known about this problem for years. And there are a lot of things you can do to avoid having this problem. Following best practices for writing configuration is good. Making your configuration consistent is one, because that means it's easier for other people to get into it and understand. Some of the ways that made it super easy to add new services, they do hurt the maintainability. I have a particular knack for adding services via host groups, because I used to love it when I was adding them, and then 3 years later I was like checking up on my own configuration file. I was like, How is this even linked? Oh my God. All right. So that's the last challenge I have, and then we'll go to the good stuff, that is Adagios. Super important when you start, especially when you start a new monitoring project, is to decide actually how you're going to do that. We have billion and one types of clients and protocols that we can use. Now we have one more, NTPA, super cool. You have to decide on which plugins you're going to use. Sometimes it's Wild West. Like for me, it's not unusual that you have to use all of these protocols to monitor what you need. Deciding who are going to be your monitoring admins and deciding on who are going to be your monitoring users can be important, especially the last one, because it will help you understand how you're going to group your servers together. Because for many people, it's not easy afterwards to rewrite all your contact groups and host groups. I usually end up doing the same things when I suggest to my customers what kind of software stack they go for. And I show them something that looks like this, and it's trying to convey the point that you need a healthy balance of your monitoring, your configuration. I put graphing here, but we can say reporting would be a better one. And I think if you have a healthy mix, you have something nice. And I want at some point to be able to say, if you put Adagios here in the middle, yeah, you have something nice. Because I think maybe it's a good balance. So I talked about typical software stack. So that's like, go to my customer and say, okay, these are the pieces of software you're going to install, and this is before I ask the question, what are you going to monitor? Like, this is just the stuff that you should always have in. The plugins that always go in, the official ones, just do all of them. Don't pick out which ones you're going to need this. No, not worth it. We maintain a repository called OK plugins, and that's plugins that either we write or maintain and distribute. And there's somewhere between like 50 and 70 of them, and they are usually a good representation of the enterprise equipment that we work with. So there's a lot of stuff for like Brocade, HP, IBM, all the disk arrays and sound stuff. Some guy in Germany wrote these. They're pretty cool. I think we found check MySQL health first, and turned out he wrote that for most of the big databases. Super thanks to that guy, wherever he is. He made my life easy. So NRP and NS client, that has been our traditional weapon of choice by default when you have agents on your servers. SNMP, VMI, HSS, mostly for equipment. We're going more and more, because we work a lot with companies that are software developers, and they want to monitor their internal systems that are writing, and we're going more and more into the approach of using web services in a way that you agree with the developers on a protocol. This is how you will write your check on your server side, and I will use check HTTP on my end. That means that the people that know the problem domain the best and the checks the best, they are in the environment that they are familiar with. They don't have to go shell scripts. We often go this way today. Graphite. I don't know if anyone here is using Graphite. Some of you are using Graphite. Very cool. It can be good in the way it's a bucket of application metrics. You don't have to graph all of them, like you would do with PnP for Nagios. But sometimes you have the situation where there are some metrics that are kind of cool to you, but you don't really want to alert on them. So what we have done previously, you have like check CPU. You run it all the time on all the servers, even though it's always green, just because you want that trend line. And that can be really useful sometimes. Now we're going a little bit into having all those miscellaneous metrics going into Graphite. And if you want to alert, check Graphite. Okay, broker modules, MK live status. If you don't have that, like stop whatever you're supposed to do on Monday and install that first. PMP, that's what we use for graphing. And then we have Mod Gearman. Who knows Mod Gearman? Okay, yeah. It solves a lot of problems, doesn't it? So taking that load down all of a sudden became super easy. Then usually we present some interface for users. So we use our own UI, Adagios, for users. And there's also this one here called Truck. Kind of looks like the old CGIs for Nagios Core, but they're a little bit nicer and they're like a little bit more dynamic. They're not written in C. SMS and emails is of course classical, and that's also an interface towards your users. For administrators, we almost exclusively use these today. So Adagios, Pinac, if you want to do changes into config, removing a single host or something, you can do it from the command line quite easily. Bulk edits all of a sudden became super easy. Yay for that. And this stack I mentioned, it's one yum install away. We're not quite there yet with the Debian packages. We're like halfway through, but like 50 plus plugins, it does take a little time to package all of those. But what I'm trying to convey is that, so I have a software stack that I really love, and it doesn't take more than 30 minutes to get all that installed. And that is a plus, for me at least. Because I don't like compiling things anymore. It's boring. It was fun years ago. Okay, let's talk about Adagios. We are an add-on to Nagios. Written in Python, we're heavily based on Pinac. We also use livestatus. I say here that we are the Swiss Army knife for Nagios related stuff. That's what we want to be. Maybe we're not there yet, I don't know, but we feel super good about ourselves. And we say we are the world's best web configuration. And the reason why we make this claim is because we do define everyone else as a config generator, not a config editor. And for us, that was the biggest reason why we went into it, because there was a lot of other web configuration kits out there, and we went like, oh, all of these suck. We're going to make our own that sucks. But we're going to do it a little bit differently, because I know that if you're really good with your Nagios configuration and you want to edit it by hand, because sometimes that's the fastest way to do things. And that can be a real hard problem if you have a web configuration interface out there. And if someone makes a change in that one, it's going to delete your /etc/Nagios and override it with whatever it had in its database. I think that's not productive. In fact, I think that's the definition of counterproductive. This is what we want to be. If a new feature comes into Adagios, it usually comes in by one of two things. It's a personal itch for me, or it's solving a problem for me, or I'm convinced that it will make Nagios more nice. It will allow you to do something either faster or better than you were doing before. We take super good care of respecting other people's configuration, because usually our users already have a Nagios in place and they're installing Adagios, and we don't want to mess up anything in their configuration. So if you open up our web configuration interface and you make one tiny change, that's exactly what we want to write into the config. We don't want to override anything. Toolkit, we love the word toolkit, and we love other people's toolkits, so we want to be a toolkit for ourselves. There are more people than me that like Adagios. I am super happy about this Nelson Mandela guy. I know for a fact the real Nelson Mandela was on a sick leave when this came, so I do have the secret hope that he was at home installing Adagios. And whoever wrote that, thank you. So our interface is, we try to hide the fact from users that we are writing separate modules, but like we don't do that very well. So you can kind of see that That's different pieces of code out there, that kind of like glued together. But these are our big ones, our big modules. So we have one configure module that's meant to just be that, like click a host, change the host name, click save, done, or like add the contact group to a host. Doesn't really do more than that. Super handy if you're troubleshooting how some sort of inheritance weirdness is going on. We have our OK config. Really good if you just want to add a host and then say it's a Linux server and deploy the agent that Pally likes. And all of a sudden, you're monitoring a Linux server. This is new for us. We're also doing a status UI now. Definitely not what we're heading up with when we started, but I think it's pretty cool, so I'm going to show it to you later. Feature list, I'm not going to read through it all, but web API, blah, 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 blah. Audit log via Git. If any of you guys are not using Git to maintain your Nagios configuration files, also stop everything you're doing, including the livestatus install, and do that. Learn Git right away. Blah, 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 network scan. I never even use it myself, so don't worry about that one. Status interface. I don't know, for those of you that develop software, you may have known the tendency when you talk about the stuff that you're making, you only talk about the stuff that you just wrote last week. Because the problem that you solved 6 months ago, that's not special for you anymore. So that's why I usually just talk about the new features. But so we have a status interface. We also have a REST interface on top of that. We integrate with a bunch of stuff. We integrate with livestatus and PnP natively. We do Google Maps. Who has Google Maps for the Nagios? Was it useful? Cool for the users. That's.
I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get there and you just stop talking. See how they go.
But yeah, I think everyone guessed what he was saying, that cool for management. I'm super curious if management agrees. Whenever you say, oh, no, this is completely, it's crap, but it's good for management. Okay, so I'm going to be demoing this. In case the demo site is down, I'm going to flick through some screenshots like real fast. Some of it might catch your attention, some of it might not. Okay, service lists, status detail. This I really like. If performance metrics come in, parse them, and print them in a table. Don't have that huge blob of performance data. It's terrible, usually. But now it's slightly less terrible. We integrate with the graphs natively. So there's no more action URL. Click that action URL. You're now in a completely different interface. You probably have to log into that one as well. Adagios just knows where your PnP is installed, and if there are any graphs, it will display that, and you can use your action URL for something way more useful. Do have maps, and yeah, they're not always useful to me, but they are kind of pretty. There is an attribute in the Nagios configuration file called 2D coordinates and also 3D coordinates. And that's why if it's there, it will be there, and your host will have a balloon on the map, and then you have some lines to its network parent. I do have one customer that likes this because they are really spread out, and they monitor the wide area network, and sometimes they can see like, oh yeah, right, all of this is down, and like, here are all the lines going. I will go into this in the demo. We love making dashboards. And seems like this is what we're doing for our customers all the time. They go, oh yeah, that Adagios, that's great, but all we wanted was dashboards. Can you make one that looks like this and this and this? I don't know if many of you guys have made your own dashboards, but what we want to do in the future is to make it super easy to create a cool looking dashboard in Adagios. We work a lot with performance metrics. And now I'm getting back on what you're doing recently is what's super important. But we've found some interesting use cases where querying the performance data or the metrics that are coming into Nagios as a database on its own. And it's not strictly related to the OK warning critical status. One of them I think I have on the slide here, yeah. So we often deploy a check by default that does checks for security updates on Windows and Linux machines. Not often do you go into enterprises that say, okay, we want the alerts if there's a security patch. They try that for 1 week, and they realize that on every patch Tuesday, there's like 1 billion hosts that are read in Nagios. And then they go, okay, wait. We had a monitoring system before, but now we're trying to do something else called unhandled problems. That's just your work for the next week. So they back away with that. So sometimes they keep the check in, but it's always returning green. If it's always returning green, then what they're doing, they say, oh yeah, we would like to use Nagios, just click and see how many updates there are. And you go like, okay, yeah, that's nice, we can do that. Like, we're doing more than monitoring now, but all right, but now we have this. So you can kind of query your servers and you can just look how many of them have a security update and how many do not. And we're not quite sure where we'll go with this. Maybe it will be total crap and we'll throw it away, but I'm finding more and more use cases where I'm troubleshooting a problem. I'd say, oh, okay, it's good to look at the CPU usage of all my servers at the same time, sorted by the ones that are not using their CPU or using their CPU, depending on what kind of environment you have. On the topic of dashboards, everyone is making their own business processes, so we joined the fun and we made our own, mostly to have a dashboard like this. And this is a screenshot of my Monitor Iceland project. So if it's up, I will just show it to you real time. So this is related to my talk because we have one very small dashboard here that it's made in Nagios, but it's trying to convey something that is like higher level than just your service checks. And I see my graphs are broken, so I will go back to the screenshot. So that's what we wanted to do originally. It was like, how can you look at your project and have it more than just the flat number of problems that you're having? So you try to group it into something super simple. And what does super simple mean? It means just, is my mail working, yes or no, and not really the ability to drill down what it is. That's for something else. This is super nice for NOC to have. Just are the systems working or not? And we had a weird compulsion when we were creating test data for it. We were like, okay, yeah, how, like, we need real test data because what we currently have is crap. We can't ship it to the customer and run it on their data. So let's monitor Iceland. And we had the notion, like, can we do that and take a whole society and put it in something really simple, like normal or problems or not problems? So what is a business process for us? One global status, in this case Iceland status, minor description, real-time monitor of all sorts of cool stuff. Sub-processes, these might be service checks or host checks, or they might be other business processes that they have their own logic. I think the typical use case for a business process is that you want to convey DNS, it's fault tolerant, so you want maybe to put a warning if one of your DNS servers is down, and critical if both of them are down. And that's like short logic. Oh shit, I'm running out of time. Graphs, like how many patients are in an emergency room. Okay, so Adagios. Who wants to see Adagios now? It's been time. Yeah, okay, good. So we do have a demo site that's called demo.adagios.org. And I was going to use that one, but I had the sense last night to check it out, and someone had been adding a bunch of hosts called Viagra or something, so I'm going to go to this one instead. But if you want to check it out later, you can check it out over there. So this is my local host instead. This is what I develop on. I was coding on it on the plane, like on the way here, so I hope I didn't mess anything up. We'll just see how it goes. So you see we have a top navigation here, and one of the items is Nagios, so we have the, we're now calling it the legacy interface. But this is our status view. You have here like a quick overview of your environments. Usually you're just interested in, it says here up that we have 9 problems. Okay. Then we get a list of services, kind of like you do in the, what's it called, host detail page, something like that. So ping, a lot of these have warning because they're pinging hosts in Iceland, and I'm far away from Iceland now. We have nice things that I miss from the other interface, like selecting a bunch of them, doing checks, reschedule a check, acknowledging many of them at the same time. Like, hey, take care of this, yeah, okay. Or even better, this is a feature that I had no idea would be so popular for my users, but send out a custom email for the selected services. So I can go here, go send it to my colleague Tommy. Hey, I am at conference. You will have to take care of it. It's way easier than saying acknowledge, I will take care of it. And then you can like acknowledge it at the same time. And what he will receive is an email. You have the list of services, and you have like a nice button that says like acknowledge, unacknowledge, remove, or just look at what he was talking about. If we click on a particular service, we're going to see the detail page. So you see here it's organized into a few tabs. On a general tab, we like have super general stuff. Here are the performance metric I was talking about before. And what we'll do is that because the performance metrics, they have warning and critical thresholds on them, we will put like, so packet loss is okay. Round trip average was not. So we will give you like a hint. Why is there a problem with the check? We do resolve the check command to the actual command that is being run. I don't know if you guys, for me that is super useful sometimes to have that. We have a history tab, so you can see here like what's been going on for like the past day or past week or something, and the graphs that I mentioned. And again, we didn't have to configure any action URL. That's super important for me, not to configure stuff. It was just found it. Those are the graphs that exist. Nice. And so we have a few more buttons here. I will go into edit, because that's what we all want to see. Yeah. So we did click server. We go into an interface that looks slightly different because now you're an admin. You're not a user in the system anymore. Again, we're separating into categories to make it like kind of easier. The important stuff goes front, host name, service description. Service groups, we do few things that are like kind of nice. Like if you want to add it to a service group, you can like Acme network save changes. It's gonna pump on a little bit. It will make sure the configuration interface, like the configuration is still valid. And then we have like a nice icon up here that's telling us that now would be a good time to reload Nagios. Super sweet. Adding a service to a service group wasn't that hard anymore. For me, it's usually the problem is knowing what are their actual names. We see here on the far right, we have like links to related stuff, like which template is he using. We can click on that to like easily resolve. We can see which check commands it's using. It's over here, but to make things even easier, we have here a monitoring tab. will tell you what check command you're using, and in this case we're using OKC check ping. So that's something that we ship, and we write them in a specific way, so we use the custom variables a lot. Who uses custom variables here for their service checks? We use them a lot now. We use them for almost everything. And this is one of the benefits, that you can put all your arguments, like the mysterious arg1 or arg2, all of a sudden they have a name. So it becomes really easy for us to, for example, increase round trip times. Here we have the command line, what it will run, and right here at the bottom we will see the actual command that is being run. So hang on, so we have a button here to the right that says run check plugin. That's not having Nagios executed, that means Adagios will execute that check plugin. So you didn't have to reload anything, you can still be just messing about. And you go, okay, running. Oh, okay, so there's a warning. Why is there a warning? Yeah, because I'm in the States and that server is in Iceland. So we say, okay, maybe we need to fix some thresholds. Change it to 200. And we will see it has now updated the command line here to 200. And we go, okay, yeah, we're happy with that. We're going to do a save. Yeah, exactly. Run again. Okay, yay. Check is returning green. I like green checks. So now I could reload Nagios if I so wanted. Go back, reschedule it, and be happy. Like that's the whole point of this. It's to make it like slightly more nice and slightly easier to do things. Think I'm running out of time. I'm not sure, but I have 3 minutes. Okay, so hang on. Did I have more slides here? See what I had here. Yeah, okay. We are open source. We really believe in gift culture, so we are giving it away, and we are getting super cool patches back that make our lives easier. We really love that. That said, I do have a work, and I do work for a company, so we do professional services and we do sell support contracts. So please give us a lot of money, because I have 11 kids back home and they're all really hungry. And it also means that we will have the money to buy a better logo, because I think we can all agree that this cannot do. Like, definitely not. We're on GitHub. Please fork us on GitHub. Tell us that you like us. Send us happy mails, beers, whatever. Thank you very much. So.
All right, now is the fun time. We need some questions. How about a few questions? Okay.
Please bring easy questions first.
I don't know if it's easy or not, but yesterday they were mentioning there's an issue with reload versus restarting on the Core 4.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, how's that going to affect Adagios, and what kind of problem do you feel it is?
If the problem is the same as I agree or think it is, from our end, we will just know if you're using Nagios 4, we will do restart by default instead of reload. We will probably do some other nice things. So they say that you have maybe 1 second of downtime, and it really sucks if you are like reloading your status interview and it says like everything is broken, and then you like do again. So if that's really going to be a problem, we will have to do some retries in our code, because we want this to be smooth. We don't like error messages. Our users don't like them, and that makes us not like them. Did that answer your question?
Anybody else? Was Paul that thorough? He was that thorough? He got all your questions answered? Paul, you're amazing.
I was talking about stuff I was good at. Nobody's going to ask what we're bad at. That's good. I like that.
Last chance. All right. Paul?
Yes.
Now one more round of applause for this guy.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.